All right, let's pick up where we left off. I have my raindrops falling. I have something in my code that you don't have. I do have this thing kind of in my bottom right, or maybe some of you added it. But basically, all this thing is doing is, this is actually, for me, I had it just count the size of the array list. So it's just constantly updating with what's the current size of the array list. And what we can see out of this is that the array list is growing very large very quickly. And that's because like these drops, they fall, but even though they disappear from view, they're still actually moving. We just can't see them on the screen because technically the field of this, the X and Y values are infinite. And so it could really just keep dropping forever and ever and ever, even though we're not seeing it, and that's not really useful. So the problem with that is that, we're using up precious computer resources by having these raindrops continue to be kind of continue to access, because when we're doing our for loops, we have to actually look through that array list and modify all the things in that list. So as this number grows and grows and grows, we're taking up like more and more resources. And eventually, if your computer's a little bit slower, or your IDE or whatever, something, it could actually slow your computer down a little bit. So the goal for this one is to get this to stop. What I want the goal for this assignment is to get the raindrops to hit a certain point, and then I want to do two things. One, I want to remove them from the screen, and then I also want to remove them from the array list, because I don't want them taking up storage anymore. I want them to be deleted, and I want to remove them when they hit a certain spot. So let's pause this. Let's see what we have. All right, so inside of our code here, let's see. I'm just going to look down at my delete rain task. Obviously, this is not exactly identical to yours, but you will have a delete rain method in your code. Let's see. So I want delete rain. Here's what I want to do. I want to add delete rain to my while true loop. And like the whole point of delete rain is that it is going to get called constantly, and it's going to constantly look through the array list to see if there's any things that need to be removed. Okay, so down here inside this, I'm going to pause it while I do a quick bit of code typing here. But basically, I'm just going to write a for loop that is going to same thing, basically the same as our rainfall method. But the only difference is that I'm going to look and see what the Y value is for our raindrop. Okay, well, so let's see. All right, so if we look in here, like that's, just I really copied and pasted some code. I said, okay, for all the ovals in there, let's plot the Y values. By itself, that's not super useful, so let me check to see. What I really care about is I want to see if the Y value of this is greater than a certain number. I'm going to say 550. That's not actually the bottom of my screen, but I want to do this for demonstration purposes. So you might change this value later. And so what we want to do is, if the raindrop goes past a certain point, past 550, do something. And so what I'm going to do is, first thing I want to do is I want to make sure it doesn't take up data anymore. So I'm going to remove it from the array list. All right, so here we go. Circles.remove 0. Easy enough. We're going into the array list. We're accessing the remove function, and we're saying, hey, remove that 0 thing, that O that we're finding. And let's see how that works. All right, we're in our code. It's running. It's looking. Oh, it broke. Got down to here. I'm assuming this is like the 550 line. I could check the grid here just to double check. Let's get some rulers on there. Yeah, look, as soon as this first value hits 550, my code broke. Now, instead of panicking and assuming my computer has a virus or something, I'm going to look instead at my terminal, like where the actual code is running. Oh, and you guys aren't seeing that, so let me get this like this. Here. So what I'm looking for is especially this exception and window thread, and this is the error that I'm looking for. And this is what I want to try and train you to do, is to be able to look for errors. And you'll see in class I should have the 3 most common errors identified on the board. This is one of the major ones: concurrent modification exception. Now, I don't really necessarily care about these parts because this says like java.base. I don't know about that. But I do know this: app.delete rain. Okay, app is the name of my file. It's called app. And delete rain is one of my methods. So this is where the error is really occurring, in line number 56 of this. And so hopefully we've done some practice with this, doing null pointer exception, trying to trace those errors down. What I'm looking for is like right here for oval O in circles. Let's see. So delete rain. So it's causing a concurrent modification exception. All right. Basically, what this means is that our for loop is designed to work in a very specific way. It's really beautiful and great at certain tasks, but it's designed in a way where it expects that the size of the array list that we're working with will not change. That's just like how part of why it works so fast is that I can say the size of the array list is going to stay fixed as long as I'm running this loop. If we do anything to mess with that, if we do anything to change the size of the array list, either by adding or removing things from the array list, it's going to produce some errors because it's going to say we're changing the size of the array list. And it's going to produce this error: concurrent modification. Concurrent means like kind of ongoing or going with something. Modification means to change. An exception means like an error. So we're having some sort of ongoing, we're modifying something that shouldn't be modified. Okay, so The answer to this is that, a for loop is just not the best choice for every single possible option. If we want to remove or change the size of things, we're going to use a different approach. And I will write some code and I'll explain kind of what that approach is. All right, let's start with this. I'm going to do a while loop in here. I start with a count being 0. Because remember that our array list has all these indexes. The first thing that gets put in there is put in position 0, and then 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying here is I'm just going to start with the count being 0. That's that first location. And I'm going to run this code as long as the count is less than the size of our array list. Because I don't want to, you can look into the details about why that might make sense that it'd be less than the size. And then in here, I'm just like, okay, go into the array list and get whatever value our count is at right now. Okay, and so we're just kind of like accessing an oval. And then when we're done with this loop, we're going to increase count by 1. Okay, so there's a couple things we need to do in here. I have the circles like this, but like I'm just accessing the circle. That's not super useful. One thing I can do is like, okay, this thing is going to end up being just, when I run this line of code, this is just going to be an oval. So I can also say dot on the end of this, and I can just directly access its y value. Okay, and now we're kind of working with some of the similar stuff we had down here using our if statements. And I just need to say, well, if the circles, if this y value is greater than 550, then what do we need to do? Well, I still want to have this count here. I was almost about to delete that. That'd be a dumb mistake for me. Okay, so if the y value is greater than 550, here's what I need to do. I need to go into circles. I need to get that count value, that count, the item that's located at count. I should be more clear about what I'm saying. And then what I'm going to do is, let's see, I want to remove it. Let's see. Well, there's a couple different things I want to do. Let's see. You know what? Let me do something slightly. Okay, well, let's do this. I'm going to do dot remove. So now what this is going to do is, we said there's 2 tasks we want to do here. We want to be able to delete it from the array list and then also delete it from the screen. This thing here, this line of command is going to remove it from the screen. It's going to take it off the screen, but the array list, the size of the array list is not going to change. It's still going to continue to grow, just the dots won't be appearing on the screen anymore. So what we also want to do is we want to go into circles and we want to remove. There's a couple different ways we could do this. We can actually just remove count. And what this is going to do is it's going to find whatever the value of our count is. We're going to go into our circles array list, find the index that kind of matches count. We'll go and we're going to take the data out of it. And we're just going to kind of delete it and remove it. Let's see. And so I think that should be it. All right, so let's take a look at this. Fingers crossed. Actually, I just ran it, so no fingers crossed. I kind of cheated, but oh well. So we're going to look down here. Look, it hits the invisible fence, and all the circles get deleted. And we see that the size of our array list is staying stuck at 111. Because kind of as we add, we're deleting. We're constantly adding and deleting raindrops from this. So we have kind of that invisible fence effect. And our array list isn't changing. We're removing things from the screen. Yeah, so that's it. So I'm mindful of the time. I want to make this, I know it's a long one, but it is kind of like a complex, important topic. The end point of this is what I would say is, you can't always use a for loop for every single task. Sometimes it makes sense to use like a while loop like this. Or you could use, there's different types of loops for different situations. In this case, a while loop made a lot of sense for me, and a for loop just kind of wouldn't work. So if you get that error, concurrent modification exception, hopefully you know what to do now. It's 2 minutes short on my last video, but hopefully it's short enough to watch.